Hello and welcome back to ACRO's Good Clinical Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia McLeod. Today on GCP, we're reflecting on ACRO's Site Grants Program. I'm joined by, I think, the largest group of folks we've ever had on one episode. We've got Tafoya Hubbard, ACRO's Grant Program Manager, Dr. Bryce Palchik, Clinical Research Physician at Preferred Primary Care Physicians, Diamond Ricketts, Clinical Research Coordinator, also at PPCP, Ashley Service, Clinical Research Director at Nebraska Cancer Specialists, and Evan Roberts, Clinical Research Manager, also at NCS. While Tafoya gave us insight into the process of the grant program overall, Ashley, Evan, Diamond, and Dr. Palchik talked with me about their experiences in the ACRO grant program, how they implemented their projects, and what valuable lessons they learned along the way. I hope you all enjoy hearing from some of our grant recipients as much as I did, and with that, let's get into the episode. All right, well, I am joined today on GCP by Evan, Ashley, Dr. Palchik, Bryce, who we're probably going to call you Bryce just for ease, if that's okay, and Diamond, who are all members of the ACRO Site Grants Program that ran last year. And we're really excited to get to talk to them a little bit about their experience and learn more about their sites and where they're going after the grant program. So first of all, I figure just to kind of let our listeners know who you guys are. Can you tell us a bit about you guys, about your site, and what you do there?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Diamond. I work out of Preferred Primary Care Physicians. And what is really unique about us is that we're embedded within a private practice. So we're one of 5 PPCP offices that conduct research, and our physicians, they split their time between patient care and research. A lot of our patients or participants are already PPCP patients within the practice, which really helps create a level of comfort and trust. But we also connect with people through outside referrals and advertisement campaigns. So my specific role, I'm a clinical research coordinator here at Preferred. So I spend a lot of my time having conversations, answering questions, addressing concerns, and just making people feel more comfortable with research, because for a lot of people, it is intimidating at first. So we're really working to change that.
My name is Bryce Palchik. I'm a physician primary care. I'm one of the docs that started the practice that we're currently talking about back in 2002. We're in a suburb just called Pleasant Hills, just south of Pittsburgh.
Awesome. Ashley and Evan, tell us a bit about you guys.
I'm Ashley Service. I'm the research director here at Nebraska Cancer Specialists, which is a private community oncology practice with locations in central and eastern Nebraska, as well as one location in western Iowa. And we have a pretty large research program here with about 30 staff members and 90 clinical trials that are active at any given time. And my role as director is really to engage with our physicians and our collaborative partners to help grow the program, add new service lines, continue to develop and keep up with the ever-changing landscape of clinical research in the cancer world. So, Evan?
My name is Evan Roberts. I'm the clinical research manager at Nebraska Cancer Specialists. I've been here for about 2 years. My main role is to kind of keep things running smoothly on a day-to-day basis. I interact with all of our coordinators, our data coordinators, kind of our ancillary pieces of the research team, just to make sure that we provide the best patient care possible every day.
And we also have Tafoya Hubbard joining us on this episode. And many of you who've maybe listened to the podcast before will know this already, but she is the program manager of the Site Grants Program. So Tafoya, really glad to have you on with the site folks as well. Can you tell any of our listeners who maybe don't already know about the grant program, the basics and sort of what we were hoping to achieve with the program?
Yes, Sophia. First of all, thank you for having me back again. Happy to be here with you all. So the grant program, our design was to explore seed funding and micro grants and to show how they can help clinical trial sites remove real world barriers to participation by providing targeted financial support. We wanted to evaluate how small investments could strengthen site infrastructure, expand outreach, and ultimately increase diversity in clinical trial. And we also wanted to be able to measure those impacts that the funding had on the sites and show the support and outreach in the community and just how it impacted the overall representation of patient populations within clinical trials. And we wanted to have sites that represented different regions and different types of sites, from like community-based sites, rural sites. We wanted to make sure we included an oncology site as well in the program. And each site, of course, had their different proposal ideas. And we wanted to answer questions such as, how does community outreach impact the increase in diversity in clinical trials? How does marketing and, using technology impact increase in diversity in clinical trials? And we had one site that had needed a piece of equipment. So how did that impact their overall site capabilities to impact the community and reach various diverse patient populations?
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of different programs in the program. So
Yes.
a diversity, shall we say, of programs in the diversity grants program.
Right, a diversity of ideas and proposal ideas and grant
Yeah.
ideas to make their vision come to fruition as it related to increasing diversity in clinical trials. And just community outreach and engaging within their community and building relationships and things of that nature. What does that look like? And provide education on what a clinical trial is and access to healthcare via clinical trials.
I want to get into your experiences in the program, but I think we should probably start with what led you to apply for the program. Maybe Ashley and Evan, will start with you guys this time.
Yeah, so we first heard about this program actually through one of our partnerships with a CRO that we had monthly calls with. And during those monthly calls, we kind of brought up the idea of addressing the diversity gap in research. And so, we kind of brainstormed ideas with that CRO partner, and then we brought that back internally to our team and said, is anybody interested in kind of working on this? So that contact at that CRO actually sent me this opportunity, and the timing was just perfect. We had just stood up a DEI committee within our research team, and this was just a great first chance to see what we could make of this. It's something we talk about, but without sort of that initiative to go after, we didn't really know how to move forward. And so this was great timing for us to have this opportunity to force our team to really think about how we want to do this. And then the application process was just pretty straightforward. It wasn't overly cumbersome. And it forced us to really kind of decide how we wanted to tackle this.
That's really great to hear on the application process, because we did think about that a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear it wasn't too much of a burden to fill out. But Bryce and Diamond, same question to you. How did you hear about the program?
My interest was kind of born out of frustration that, this is going on for quite a few years. That at the time of feasibility, you'd sit down with a pharmaceutical company, and I do think that their intentions were good. They wanted to do the right thing, especially in terms of representation. I also think that they didn't necessarily know what to do. And they always would say, we have some extra funds for you. Tell us what your effort's going to be to improve representation. And every single time, literally this has been going on for years, I just said, if we're talking about this now, you're too late, because I needed your help a year ago before the study, independent of the study, to help us make better engagement with certain communities. And I said that so many times, and I stood up at so many meetings, especially SCRS, and said that people finally started to listen. And back in 2023, I should say, it was at SCRS, and Rachel Tarleton Fonis from IQVIA, she was one of the speakers, and I kind of went up to her afterwards and just spoke of my frustration. And she said, well, next year, ACRO is going to start a funding program. And that's kind of how that was our entry point right there. So it was an avenue for us to allow us to kind of work on something that it's been in the back of my mind for a long time, but I just felt that I didn't have the proper support until ACRO had the funding program. So it worked out perfectly for us.
Yeah, I mean, timing is everything, I guess, so it really is very serendipitous that you guys were at that same meeting. Okay, so one of the things that we thought about while we were crafting the program internally at ACRO was we sort of imagined that you guys as sites were pretty tired of people telling you what you needed and what would make things better at your site. So part of how we crafted the program was to let you guys design your own project, tell us how you wanted to spend the money if you were to get it, and really kind of let you lead the way over the course of the year. So with that in mind, would love to hear from you guys what the project was that you pursued during the 12 months of the program.
So our project centered really around improving research literacy, like clinical trial literacy, and then broadcasting the idea that NCS has a really robust clinical trial program. We're kind of across town from a big academic institution. We wanted to also let people know that they didn't have to go to that big academic institution. They could get that same service in their community. So the core of our idea was to create a brief educational video, and it highlighted some of the core pieces of what participation in a clinical trial looks like. Tried to take some of that stigma away from participating in research. And then the second half of it was to kind of throw NCS's name out there as somebody who provides really high quality clinical research services, cutting edge treatment opportunities, and then again highlight that you didn't have to go to somewhere you maybe weren't as comfortable. You could go still be treated by your same physician that you've been seeing just down the street from your home. So we had this video created, translated into Spanish, which is our second largest non-white demographic in our area. And then our original plan was to attend community oncology events around Omaha and central Nebraska and get out there with the people that were attending those events and have them watch that video on some tablets that we had purchased and engage with them in real time to try to get their feedback on NCS clinical research and what their feelings are.
Awesome. Diamond, Bryce, what did you guys get up to in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so our project was really centered around community outreach and engagement. So we like to think of our site as being the door to research. And our goal was to get people comfortable walking through that door. But we soon realized that engagement doesn't just start with going out into the community. There's a lot of work that has to happen internally first beforehand. So that focused on educating ourselves, really taking the time to understand DEI and culture sensitivity, and also the historical context that have shaped how certain people and communities view healthcare and research. So from there, we made sure that our entire staff was aligned in that mindset because every interaction matters. We emphasize being genuine, transparent, and very intentional in how we communicate. So with that foundation in place, once that foundation was in place, we were able to step into the community to create meaningful connections. And ACRO actually played a huge role in helping us kickstart and support that process. So we are very, very grateful. But when we talk about research and outreach, it's not just about recruitment numbers, it's about building relationships and creating a space where people feel seen, heard, and respected.
Now, Toy, as part of the program, you met with the sites regularly on an individual basis. I would love to know what those calls were like for you. I imagine you got some great insights into what the sites were really going through on the ground, what they were working on and experiencing. Could you just share a little bit of that with us?
Sure. So initially, when we started meeting, the sites were just very excited to be selected and get their programs off the ground and kick off and running. I met monthly with each site, and we met for like anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes because they also provided a monthly written report. So when we would meet, they would go over any gaps, any successes, what was working, what wasn't working, anything that needed to be tweaked. They would ask me for feedback if they needed any helps to pivot. And they also just were letting me know how things were going within the community, how the programs was going, how their webinars were going, how their community health fairs were going, how the relationship building was going, and also what the feedback they were getting from community members. I know one site, for example, they realized being out in the community and they're working with the senior patient population. They were working in the Alzheimer's space, and they were like, or the community members were like, well, someone in my family doesn't have Alzheimer's, or I'm not impacted by that. But however, I have family members that are impacted by Parkinson's. Do you have any Parkinson's studies? So if they're not out in the community, they wouldn't have been able to receive that feedback from their communities that they're serving. So that was information and feedback and data that they could take back to their sites and, go from there. And so it was just what they were learning, what was working in their program, what the community needs were. Because again, it's all about working with your community and not just going into the community dictating what needs to be done or what they need, but it's listening as well and building those relationships. So they had, food drives. Some of the sites had a community baby shower and just things of that nature. I was collecting the data as well because we all know data is what we're here for as well. So seeing their numbers, their randomization numbers, their enrollment numbers, their screening numbers, and comparing that to where they were last year at that time.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those check-ins were really great. I hope also for the sites, I think to be able to have those regular touch points with you and just sort of be able to be a resource to them as they needed it. So I'm glad we made those work over the course of the year.
We had a 6 months check-in with all the sites. So they were able to come together as well, and they were able to hear what was working and what wasn't working and what the lessons learned were, and to share that information across all the sites in the program. And that was very helpful. I know a few sites met at a few of the conferences last year and were able to connect and talk about the program and being a part of the program and what that looked like for their individual site.
I know the program's technically over, but I know we want to stay
Yeah.
connected with you guys as much as we can. And so internally at ACRO and our board, we talk to them all the time about how the program was going and where we're going next and all of that great stuff. And this is a project that we are all very proud of, the work that you guys did and sort of what you experienced and what you were able to achieve. But I know it wasn't always smooth sailing, and part of what we want to do with this episode and with the white paper that's going to come out of this is share lessons learned so other sites can also implement some of the successes, but also maybe learn from some things that didn't work as well. And I think that's okay. That's all part of the learning process. What were some of the challenges you encountered along the way, and how did you work to address them?
We were really ambitious on paper when we thought we were going to go to all of these clinics and present our research program and introduce the idea that, hey, you don't have to send your patients to these large institutions across the country to get access to clinical trials. We want you to send them to us. We're closer, more convenient, for a lot of reasons. It might be beneficial to the patient to consider coming to our research program versus going to a large national institution to do that. The reality is getting scheduled in very busy clinics and trying to get face time with people who are worrying about 500 other things in any given day was really we backtracked from that pretty quickly. We realized, well, if somebody was trying to come to our clinic and do this, that's a nice idea, but we have a lot of other priorities that we have right now. So no, thank you. So then we, as Evan mentioned, kind of pivoted and said, well, let's just get out in the community. Everybody knows somebody who has cancer, unfortunately. And so let's go talk to them and let them become aware of, we have this right here in our own community, and it's a great resource that many patients could benefit from. So let's just go talk to them directly. So we started attending community events. A lot of them were cancer focused. The walks that people do, fundraisers. We attended craft fairs. We did everything we could think of where we could get in front of a lot of people who probably weren't coming in our doors already and aware of our research program. So we adopted when we realized, wow, we were probably a little too ambitious with our plan initially. But that ended up working out great because we did get in front of a lot more people than we thought we would. And we got a lot of outside referrals, a lot of outside inquiries as a result. And so I think our lesson learned really was, as good of an idea is, if it's difficult to implement, it's probably not going to get too far. And so we kind of just we're willing to adjust on the fly, and we were grateful for ACRO's support when we said, hey, now we want to do this. Is this okay? And they said, yeah, run with it. So we just had a great experience with learning as we go and then meeting the community where they were at.
Some of these things I'm going to say kind of sound like a cliche, but they're true. One is it truly takes a village. And I mean, my concept was pretty broad. It was pretty huge, and we're only actually still in pretty early steps for what I want to accomplish. What I did was I really did want to establish good relationships and get to know people on a personal basis so they would trust us. So in terms of enrolling a lot of patients, we haven't even done that yet. We're still working on the trust, but I'm actually pretty pleased with what we've kind of done. We picked a community 15 minutes from our office. One lesson is use the resources you already have and use your prior history. I picked a couple who are in their early 50s. They've been my patients for 30 years. I've taken care of 5 generations in that family. And when I decided that I wanted to do this, I took them out to lunch and I said, this is what I'm trying to do. Tell me what you think. And so lesson number 1, use your own resources. And they were wonderful. They got me involved with a town called Clairton, which is 15 minutes away. She got me involved with this group. It was a brand new nonprofit in Clairton called Citizens Uniting for Progress. And it's a group that wants to do better for the people, the community of Clairton. And Diamond and I are involved with them. I'm on their board. We do a lot of activities with them, not necessarily research, but we really are becoming part of that community. So lesson number 1, takes a village. Lesson number 2, build upon your resources and keep building. And it's an ongoing process. The other thing is one size doesn't fit all. We're a small site. We have 5 coordinators, 5 doctors, and the docs aren't full-time. I wanted to create a pilot program, a program that I could show that if we're successful, then other small sites can be successful, because the pharmaceutical industry is running out of investigators. We need more investigators, and it's a way that I thought in our slice, as not being a big research site, that we could show other people how to do that. The other thing is, these efforts, they have to be sincere and they have to be ongoing, because people will see through you right away. I mean, if you go down there like a politician and say, give me your vote, and then you disappear the day after election day, they're going to say, we're not going to bother with you anymore. So anyway, that's a good lesson learned.
I want to give you guys a chance to brag a little bit because we talked about challenges. We got that out of the way. But I'd love to know what you guys feel were some of your biggest successes over the year during the program. What would you like people to know worked really well?
Ashley kind of touched on it in her last answer, but we saw a massive uptick in our external referrals. So this is patients that are not currently NCS patients. And it's not just from like our area or catchment area. It was from all over the country. We had multiple international patients that reached out to us about a clinical trial that we had open, which is huge for a community oncology practice in Nebraska. So we saw an uptick from 10 referrals in 2024 to 58 referrals in 2025. Absolutely incredible for a 1-year increase. That was our biggest success for sure.
That's amazing. Diamond, Bryce, what about you guys?
Yeah, so I think one of our biggest successes has been the way that the community of Clairton has embraced us and how we've been received by them. I mean, honestly, we made it a priority to show up and not, like Dr. Palchuk mentioned earlier, not just necessarily research related efforts, but for things that matter to that community. A big part of our presence is attending, for example, we attended local food pantries. We gave talks at the senior center in Clairton and also at the municipality building. So I feel like showing up and just supporting them alone has gained their trust, because I mean, ultimately, trust is not something that you can ask for. It's something that you earn over time. So the fact that people are becoming more open to engaging with us, having conversations, and even just recognizing who we are, although that's small, that's huge for us. So we're really grateful for that success. So it really shows that the work that we're doing is making an impact in like a real, meaningful, and genuine way.
I'd like to add, just to go a little bit further. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, but it's often said that you should hire people that better represent the community that you're trying to engage with. We would not have hired Diamond if it wasn't for ACRO. ACRO helped that a lot. That's one of our big successes, to tell you the truth. I mean, Diamond came in with zero background in research. She's now becoming a full-fledged research coordinator. Hopefully this will be a career for her. Hopefully she'll work with us for a long time. And that's what I was talking about in terms of, I mean, you really have to think long term, and I'm thinking long term, so that you gave us the kickstart that we needed in all, not just in the efforts of giving talks and meeting people, but just improving our own infrastructure so that we can move on. I mean, one of our people is retiring. One of our research coordinators is retiring in July, and you allowed us to fully train somebody since last year, so that smooth sailing, we're going to keep going with Diamond.
That makes me feel so good to hear stories like this coming out of the program. This is what we wanted to happen when we stood up the program. So as we talked about, the program has concluded in terms of like your ongoing involvement with ACRO officially. Looking ahead, where are you guys going? What is your site up to next? What do you see on the horizon?
So we're obviously in a very growth-oriented mindset. What that looks like seems to change all the time. I think the only constant in clinical research is change. So, it's trying to keep up with where the studies are going, where our patients are going, what our staff needs are. Like Evan had mentioned, we had a huge uptick in outside self-referrals. And so we had to quickly address, well, how are we going to manage these? How are we going to get through and be responsive to patients and give them an answer either way? Yes, we might have a trial for you, and no, we do not. And so we've had to continue to adjust how we do things just with the growth that we've been fortunate enough to see. And I think, we're definitely interested in continuing a relationship with ACRO. We've had such a great success with this program. And I just wanted to reiterate something Diamond has touched on in this conversation, continue to figure out how to meet people where they're at. From our perspective, we're working on developing new cancer treatments. Like, who doesn't want to be part of that? But that's not the mindset that everybody has in the community. And so trying to figure out, like, okay, where are you at? And what can I do to help educate you on what we're trying to do? And how can I get you to see my perspective? And how can I understand your perspective better so that we can continue to engage with individuals who normally wouldn't want to be part of a clinical trial? It's 100% acceptable to say, I'm leery of this. I don't know about this. I don't feel comfortable with this. And I feel like it's our job to meet you there and try to figure out, what about this is scary or something you don't trust? And is there anything that I can do that would help address any of those things? So I hope that we continue to kind of be thinking about these things in our day-to-day lives and in our work as we continue to grow our program.
So, to set goals, you have to have, in my mind, the way my mind works, my personality is, what's the big picture? What are you aiming for? When I was trying to figure out how to do this correctly, I read a lot. I went to a lot of meetings. ACRS actually had a couple of years of special April meetings entirely on DEI. I went to one of those, and the American College of Physicians, American Diabetes Association, a lot of the places that I go, when you go to the meetings, they always have sections. And so I kind of learned what could be done or what should be done. What I was trying to figure out is, how do you translate that? How do you put it into a process? I had a great conversation. There was this young man at CRS one year, and he was from a site. He didn't work for CRS, but they asked him to sit in a booth and ask questions about DEI. And I asked him about all the different things that he was doing. And I said, this is wonderful. This is really wonderful. How do you pay for that? And he goes, well, we got a venture capitalist. So then I realized, the sites that really know how to do this, most of them, there's some rare exceptions, but they're either bigger sites with more resources than ours, or they're university sites, or they're funded by venture capitalists. So I was kind of looking for a way of how a smaller site can be successful. So one is more of a hope than a plan. I hope organizations like ACRO can continue to get the word out that this is collaborative, this is cooperative, has to be a group of people working together to make change, and not just expect one pharmaceutical company just to support their own efforts and forget about everybody else.
I think you guys are all trending in a very good direction, and it's exciting. But lastly, we talked about, some lessons learned, but I was wondering if you guys had any sort of advice that you might leave for others who are listening to this, who maybe also are at a site and are maybe in the position you guys were in a year ago, thinking about, where you wanted to go. Any advice you have for the folks listening to this episode? Ashley, Evan, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the biggest advice kind of touches on some of the issues that we've all brought up over the course of this episode, and that's there are roadblocks, there are challenges. Like, if it was easy, everybody would be able to do it. So don't get discouraged. Don't move on just because your first idea didn't work. Don't be afraid to pivot. Ashley talked about it. I talked about it. Our first idea didn't pan out the way we wanted it to, and even our subsequent idea didn't work quite as well as we wanted it to. So it forced us to be really creative about how do we actually continue to engage with the community. And that led us to have a heavier involvement with even our internal marketing team. And that's moving forward even post ACRO. So now our marketing team is really focused on advertising our clinical research program with the practice. And that's just going to help us moving forward. So just flexibility, don't be afraid to pivot. And, even when things get hard, it's okay. Like I said, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
I would just say the same thing. I mean, a lot of this has already been said. Think of the big picture. Think of what you really want to do. Figure out what excites you. Don't get frustrated when you hit the roadblocks. But really think long term, and do the best you can to be collaborative, to get other people to listen to you. And it takes a long time. Don't get frustrated. Before we got the grant from ACRO, I mean, I actually wrote a formal investigator written protocol to try to do a community intervention, not drug related. It was at the request of somebody at one of the pharmaceutical companies. It was a 2-year process. And at the end of it, it didn't get funded. And I said, I understand this is competitive, so I'm not complaining about that, but what could you give me the exact reason why it wasn't funded? They said, because we don't fund things like that. So, keep your mind open, look at the long term, and, keep on trucking.
That's all very good advice. I love it. Well, guys, this was great. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. I know you got to talk with Tafoya a lot more over the course of the program, so it's always nice when I get to peep in and see you. But we'll, like I said, be keeping in touch. We've got more to come on the results and the readout of the grant program with our white paper. So we're really excited to take that on the road once that's published and keep sharing the good word of all the great work that you guys did this year. So just wanted to thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Nice to talk to Evan and Ashley too.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks,
good day.
guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to ACRO's Good Clinical Podcast. We'll be back next week with a new episode.